Everybody wants a love story, but not everybody wants God to write it. See, we want the Instagram version, the TikTok reel, the fairy tale ending without the faith journey. But let me tell you something. When God writes your love story, it's not rushed. It's not random, and it's never like the one you would have written for yourself. Because what you would have settled for in chapter 2, God was protecting you from in chapter 10. What you called rejection, God called redirection. What you thought was loneliness, God called preparation. And when God finally brings that person, it won't feel like forcing. It won't feel like begging. It won't feel like confusion. It will feel like confirmation. So let me show you tonight how it looks when God writes your love story. Let me tell you something powerful, something that changed my life when I understood it. God's love stories don't start with infatuation, they start with isolation. See, we live in a world where people think love is supposed to hit you like a lightning bolt, that it's supposed to sweep you off your feet, take your breath away, and happen overnight. But God doesn't write love stories like Hollywood. God doesn't write love stories like Instagram captions. God doesn't write love stories based on feelings that fade. No, God starts love stories in isolation because God builds love from the inside out. Look at Adam. He was the first man in the Bible. But did you ever notice, before God gave Adam a partner, before God brought Eve into the picture, God brought Adam into his presence. The Bible says that Adam was alone in the garden, alone with God. And in that place of isolation, God taught Adam identity. God gave Adam responsibility. God taught Adam purpose. That's because God knows something about us that we forget. If you don't know who you are in isolation, you'll lose yourself in infatuation. See, this is why some of us keep getting into relationships that drain us, that break us, that leave us more lost than we were before. We skipped isolation. We skipped preparation. We skipped God's process. We're out here saying, God, where's my person? And God is saying, where are you? I'm trying to form you first. Think about this in your own life for a second. Maybe you feel alone right now. Maybe you feel like everybody else is posting their relationship goals photos. Everybody else is announcing their engagement. Everybody else is moving on, moving up, moving in with someone. And here you are scrolling, comparing, wondering if God forgot about you. But what if you're not being left out? What if you're being set apart? That's the difference when God is writing your love story. Isolation is not punishment, it's preparation. It's in isolation that God shows you your habits. It's in isolation that God heals your wounds. It's in isolation that God builds your confidence, not based on who likes you, but based on who created you. Because here's the truth. If you don't like yourself single, you're not going to magically love yourself married. Let me say that again. If you don't like yourself when you're by yourself, no relationship is going to fix that. In fact, it's going to magnify it. That's why God does His best work in the seasons where nobody is watching. Let me give you an example. Maybe right now you feel like you're in a season of waiting and it feels boring, it feels frustrating. You're tired of being the bridesmaid and never the bride, tired of attending everybody else's baby showers, and you're still praying for a text back from somebody who knows how to communicate. But let me tell you, in this isolation, God is developing muscles in you that love will need later. Patience, kindness, self-control, healing, identity. Because real love isn't just chemistry, real love is character. Anybody can light a candle and set the mood for one night, but who can love you when you're sick? Who can pray for you when you're struggling? Who can stand beside you when life gets hard? That's why God puts you in isolation first. So when the right person shows up, you don't become a chameleon trying to change for their approval. You show up whole, you show up healed, you show up ready. Adam wasn't out here scrolling through options in the garden. He wasn't swiping right on random people because he was bored. He was busy doing what God told him to do, naming animals, working the ground, walking in purpose. And when he was ready, when God knew Adam was stable in himself, that's when God brought Eve. Let me ask you, are you building your life like Adam, or are you distracting your life with counterfeits? Because I promise you, nothing is lonelier than being with the wrong person just because you were impatient for the right one. Isolation is where God hides you. Not because you're not good enough, but because He's protecting you for something better than you would have chosen on your own. That's what happens when God writes your love story. He loves you too much to give you a relationship that's going to become an idol. He loves you too much to let you get lost in someone else before you've been found in Him. He loves you too much to let you settle for surface when He's trying to build you for depth. So don't despise your isolation. Don't rush out of it. Don't try to skip the chapter where God is making you whole, because when you let God write your love story, The person who shows up won't be the one who completes you. They'll be the one who complements what God already completed in you. And that is a love story worth waiting for. When God writes your love story, one thing becomes undeniable. The right person will bring peace, not confusion. Let's be real for a moment. We've all been there. You meet someone, it feels exciting, the butterflies are flying, the late night conversations are happening, the compliments are flowing, but then so is the anxiety. You're constantly overthinking, wondering if they're really into you, questioning if you said too much or too little, checking your phone every 5 minutes, waiting for a response. Your heart is on a roller coaster, up 1 minute, down the next. Let me tell you something loud and clear. God's love stories are not built on confusion, they are built on clarity. Peace is the language of God. Chaos is the language of distraction. See, sometimes we confuse excitement with alignment. Just because someone gives you attention doesn't mean they're giving you intention. And just because you feel a rush of emotions doesn't mean they're from God. The enemy knows how to send distractions wrapped in charm. The enemy knows how to send confusion dressed as romance. But God will send someone who calms your spirit, not someone who confuses your mind. You won't have to guess how they feel. You won't have to lose sleep over mixed signals. You won't have to fight for their respect or beg for their time. When it's from God, the person will show up with consistency, not confusion. Think about your own life. How many nights have you lost sleep over someone who wasn't even willing to lose a minute for you? How many times have you lowered your standards just to keep someone's attention? How many times have you justified their inconsistency because you didn't want to face the truth that maybe God wasn't in it? Let me set somebody free today. Love from God will never require you to sacrifice your peace for their presence. When God writes your love story, the right person will make things simple. Not perfect, but simple. They'll communicate clearly. They'll show up consistently. They'll love you maturely. Think about Jesus. When he loved people, he didn't play games with them. He didn't leave them guessing. He didn't confuse them. He spoke truth with love. He gave without expecting manipulation in return. He showed up even when it was inconvenient. That's the love God wants you to experience. You don't have to settle for being almost loved. You don't have to stay where your peace is constantly stolen. You don't have to stay in relationships that make you question your worth more than they affirm it. Let me give you a real life example. There's a woman I know. She spent years in a relationship that looked good on the outside, but drained her on the inside. Everybody said they were goals. Their pictures were perfect. Their moments in public were polished, but behind the scenes, she was anxious all the time. She never felt secure. His words didn't match his actions. He was hot 1 minute and cold the next. And you know what she realized? God never called her to survive love. He called her to thrive in it. So she let go. She walked away not because it wasn't painful, but because it was necessary. And when she let go of confusion, she made space for peace. Years later, she met a man who didn't make her question herself every day. He didn't play games with her mind. He honored her time. He valued her presence. And most importantly, he brought peace into her life. That's what happens when you trust God with your love story. He sends someone who doesn't add chaos. They multiply peace. I'm not saying relationships won't have challenges. I'm not saying there won't be moments of growth, learning, and even conflict. But what I am saying is there's a difference between growing pains and toxic patterns. Growing pains lead you closer together. Toxic patterns push you further apart. God's love story will challenge you to become better, but it will never confuse you about your value. I want to tell someone who's listening right now, stop entertaining confusion just because you're afraid to be alone. Peace is not a luxury in love, it's a requirement. And if someone is constantly disturbing your peace, maybe it's not a sign to hold on tighter. Maybe it's a sign to let go sooner, because peace is precious. God will never send you someone who treats your heart like an option when He created it as a masterpiece. When the right person comes into your life, they will bring clarity, they will bring honesty, they will bring maturity, not because they're perfect, but because they're intentional. So stop settling for temporary attention when God wants to give you permanent peace. Your heart wasn't created for confusion. It was created for connection, God's way. And when God writes your love story, it looks like peace that surpasses understanding. It looks like clarity in a world full of noise. It looks like rest in a culture full of rush. Wait for that kind of love. It's worth every lonely night. It's worth every unanswered text. It's worth every tear cried in isolation, because peace is the proof that God's hand is in it. And if it's from God, you won't have to force it, fake it, or fear it. Peace will lead the way. When God writes your love story, the timing will be undeniable. The timing will be sacred. The timing will feel like a door only God Himself could have opened. Have you ever tried to force something before it's time? Maybe it was a relationship you just wanted to work so badly. You prayed about it, but deep down you knew the timing wasn't right. But your heart didn't want to hear that. So you pushed, you compromised, you held on when God was whispering, let go. And when it crumbled, when it fell apart in your hands, you were left wondering, God, why now? Why didn't it work when I wanted it to? Let me tell you something I've learned about God. He is never late, but He is rarely early. His timing teaches you patience. His timing grows your faith. His timing develops your character so that when the blessing comes, you're not just ready to receive it, you're ready to handle it. See, sometimes it's not about the other person being ready, it's about you being ready. God won't give you a relationship to fill a void that only He was meant to fill. He won't send you a person to become your peace if you haven't learned to find peace in Him first. The right person at the wrong time becomes the wrong relationship. Let me give you a real life example. There was a man who loved a woman deeply. They met young. Everything about their connection was beautiful except for one thing. Their hearts weren't mature enough to steward that love well. They rushed. They got ahead of God. They let their insecurities lead instead of letting their healing lead. And so the relationship broke apart. Years went by. They went their separate ways. And God worked on them individually. He taught them things they never would have learned together. He healed wounds they didn't even know they had. He reshaped their priorities. And do you know what happened? Years later, without forcing, without striving, without manipulating, their paths crossed again. But this time they were whole. They weren't looking for someone to complete them. They were complete in God already. And the timing was perfect. Not because it was convenient, but because it was divine. That's how God works. His delays are not denials. His pauses are not punishments. His waiting room is not wasted space. When God is writing your love story, He is not just preparing the other person. He is preparing you, and sometimes the biggest blessing is not getting what you prayed for until you're ready to handle it. Think about Joseph in the Bible. God gave him a dream that he would lead, that he would rise, that he would be in a position of influence. But the dream didn't happen overnight. He went through betrayal, isolation, false accusations, prison, all before the promise came to pass. Why? Because the process was necessary to prepare him for the promise. Your love story is no different. Maybe right now you feel left out. Maybe it seems like everybody else is getting engaged, getting married, having their happy ever after, while you're sitting in the waiting room of heaven asking, God, what about me? But let me encourage you, just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not happening. God's not yet is just as loving as His yes. God's timing is about alignment, not acceleration. He's not trying to get you to the altar quickly. He's trying to get you there prepared. Because marriage isn't just about love. It's about responsibility. It's about selflessness. It's about commitment when the feelings fade. And God loves you too much to send you into a covenant you're not ready to sustain. Sometimes God delays your love story because He wants to protect you from heartbreak. Sometimes He delays it because there's still healing that needs to happen in you. And sometimes, listen closely, He delays it because the other person needs time to become the version of themselves that can love you the way you deserve. Don't rush what God is still writing. Think about a beautiful flower. If you try to force it open before it's ready, you destroy its beauty. But if you wait, if you let the sun and the rain do their work, it blossoms in its time. Your love story is no different. God is not ignoring your prayers. He is crafting something so intentional, so specific, so perfect for you that when it happens, you'll look back and say, now I understand why I had to wait. You'll thank God for every unanswered prayer. You'll thank Him for every closed door. You'll thank Him for every delay, because when God writes your love story, the timing will not confuse you. It will confirm you. It will be like walking through a door that only heaven could have opened. No forcing, no begging, no chasing, just peace, just clarity, just divine alignment. So don't despise the wait. God is not late. He's just preparing a love story worth waiting for. When God writes your love story, He won't just give you someone who looks good. He will give you someone who feels right for your soul. Someone whose presence feels like peace, not pressure. Someone whose energy doesn't drain you but fills you. Someone whose words don't confuse you but confirm what God has already been whispering in your heart. We live in a world that has trained us to look at the surface, to look at what's visible, to look at the highlight reel. We scroll through social media and see couples posting perfect pictures, smiling, traveling, hugging, and we start believing that love is about how it looks. But let me tell you something. When God writes your love story, the connection is not built on what looks good. It's built on what feels real. Because what looks good can fool the eyes, but only what feels right can nourish the soul. Have you ever met someone who checked every box on paper, but when you were with them, your spirit felt unsettled? They had the looks, they had the status, they had the charm, but when you left their presence, you felt confused, anxious, or even lonely. That's because attraction without alignment is empty. God knows the difference between who looks good for you and who is good for you. He knows that you don't just need someone who looks like a blessing, you need someone who lives like a blessing. Think about how many people in life have been in relationships that looked perfect from the outside, but were falling apart on the inside. The world claps for appearances, but God prepares you for substance. When God writes your love story, it's going to feel like coming home. Not because it's always easy, not because there won't be challenges, but because the connection will feel safe. Safe for your heart, safe for your dreams, safe for your soul. I know someone who dated a man for years. He was handsome, he was successful. Everyone thought they were the perfect couple, but every time she was around him, she felt like she had to shrink herself to be loved. She had to tone down her passion. She had to silence her voice. She had to perform for love instead of being embraced for who she was naturally. She would cry in private, smile in public, and wonder why her heart felt so heavy around the very person she thought she loved, until one day God gave her the courage to let go. And years later, when she wasn't looking, when she wasn't striving, when she wasn't performing, God brought her a man who didn't just see her beauty, he saw her soul. He loved the fire in her. He celebrated her voice. He didn't try to control her. He covered her. He didn't demand perfection. He created space for her authenticity. And every time she was around him, her heart felt lighter, her laughter felt louder, her peace felt stronger. That's what happens when God writes your love story. The world will try to convince you to settle for someone who looks good on Instagram, someone who fits the fantasy in your mind, someone who makes others jealous of your relationship. But when God is writing your love story, He's not trying to impress people. He's trying to heal your soul. He's going to give you someone who matches your purpose, not just your preferences. Someone who sees you on your worst days and still calls you chosen. Someone who sees your scars and says, I'll love you there too. Someone who doesn't compete with your calling, they complement it. Real love isn't loud on social media, it's loud in the quiet moments, in the way they pray for you, in the way they listen to your heart, in the way they show up when no one's watching. When God writes your love story, you won't have to beg for attention. You won't have to perform for affection. You won't have to lose yourself to gain someone else, because the one God sends will recognize your worth without needing to be convinced. You'll find yourself growing spiritually, emotionally, mentally, because love from God will never stunt your growth. It will water your soul. It will feel peaceful. It will feel safe. It will feel like home. And maybe you're reading this thinking, but I haven't found that yet. That's okay. God is still writing. He's still preparing. He's still working behind the scenes, because when it's from God, it doesn't have to be forced. You won't have to chase. You won't have to compromise your standards. You won't have to lose sleep wondering if they love you. Love from God feels clear. Love from God feels kind. Love from God feels like peace, not pressure. So stop chasing what looks good and start waiting for what feels right, because when God writes your love story, you won't have to question it. Your heart will know, your soul will rest, and your life will never be the same. When God writes your love story, He will always write it with patience, not panic, not pressure, not haste, not fear, but patience. The kind of patience that knows what is truly worth having is always worth waiting for, because when God is writing your love story, He's not just preparing the other person for you, He's preparing you for them. We live in a world that hates waiting. We hate slow progress. We hate unanswered questions. We hate quiet seasons. But can I tell you something? The waiting season is not punishment, it's preparation. God is not delaying your love story because He's forgotten about you. He's delaying it because He loves you enough not to give you something before you're ready to handle it. I've seen people rush into relationships because they got tired of waiting. They settled because they were afraid to be alone. They married the first person who showed them attention because they confused availability with compatibility. And months or years later, they found themselves trapped in relationships that drained them, discouraged them, and disconnected them from their purpose. Listen to me. Waiting on God is hard, but wishing you had waited is harder. When God writes your love story, He will write it at the right pace. And the right pace is never rushed. The right pace is rooted in trust. Trust that what He promised you, He will perform. Trust that what He spoke over your life, He will bring to pass. Trust that every delay is developing you. Every setback is shaping you. Every lonely night is teaching you to depend on Him more than on people. Sometimes God is using the waiting season to teach you how to love yourself before He allows someone else to love you. Because if you don't know your worth before marriage, you'll seek validation inside of marriage. And that's a dangerous place to be. Needing someone else to make you feel whole when God already made you complete. Waiting is where God detoxes your heart from desperation. Waiting is where God heals you from your past trauma. Waiting is where God teaches you how to hear His voice louder than the voice of loneliness. I know a woman who prayed for a husband for years, and every time she thought someone was the one, God would shut the door. It was heartbreaking. She would cry herself to sleep. She felt forgotten. But what she didn't know was that God was not ignoring her prayers. He was protecting her from prayers she didn't even know to pray. Years later, God brought her a man who exceeded her expectations, a man who loved God deeply, a man who treated her like a daughter of the King, a man who valued her mind, respected her boundaries, and cherished her heart. And you know what she said to me? She said, if God had answered my prayer when I wanted Him to, I would have missed the blessing He had prepared for me. That's why you can't panic in the waiting season. You can't let fear make decisions that only faith should be making. You can't let loneliness drive you into places where purpose was never meant to go. When God writes your love story, the timing will not be rushed, because rushed love is often reckless love. Rushed love doesn't take time to build trust. Rushed love doesn't take time to build friendship. Rushed love doesn't take time to build character. But when God is in it, patience is in it. He'll take time to grow you both. He'll take time to align your paths. He'll take time to mature your hearts, because God knows love isn't just about butterflies in your stomach. It's about battles you will face together. And you need patience to endure the hard seasons of life. Patience teaches you that love is not about instant gratification. It's about lifelong commitment. Think about a garden. No farmer plants a seed today and expects fruit tomorrow. That would be foolish. They understand that a seed has to sit in the soil. It has to endure darkness. It has to be watered. It has to take root. Only then will it break through the ground. Your love story is the same way. Right now, it might feel like you're in the soil. It might feel like you're in the dark. It might feel like nothing is happening, but underground, God is working. He's aligning paths you cannot see. He's opening doors you don't know about. He's shaping hearts in places you've never been. And when the time is right, when your heart is ready, when their heart is ready, the story will unfold in a way that only God can get the glory. That's why you don't have to chase anyone. You don't have to manipulate circumstances. You don't have to settle for half love because you're tired of waiting. No, you wait with hope. You wait with confidence. You wait knowing that the same God who created the universe has the perfect timing for your love story. Because when God writes it, it will be worth the wait. When God writes your love story, one of the most beautiful things He will do is bring you peace in your heart. Not confusion, not anxiety, not emotional games, not sleepless nights wondering where you stand with someone, not constant guessing about their intentions, but peace, real, unshakable, undeniable peace. And let me tell you, in a world that romanticizes drama and confusion in relationships, peace is rare. We've been trained by movies and social media to believe that love is supposed to be chaotic, that if it's not complicated, it's not passionate, that if it's not filled with ups and downs, it's not real. But that's not how God operates. God does not send someone into your life to disrupt your emotional stability. God does not write love stories that leave you crying yourself to sleep every night because you don't know where you stand. God does not send someone who plays with your heart like it's a toy they can pick up and put down whenever they please. God writes love stories with peace. You see, when the right person shows up, the one God sent, you won't have to force clarity. You won't have to beg for reassurance. You won't have to chase them down to communicate. They will bring consistency that naturally gives your heart peace. And this isn't just about a feeling. This is about fruit, because peace is one of the fruits of the Spirit. And where God is moving, there will be peace. I've seen so many people stay in toxic relationships because they confused attachment with love. They thought their obsession with someone was proof it was meant to be. They mistook their anxiety as passion. They thought, if I'm feeling all this intensity, it must be love. But can I tell you something? Just because someone makes your heart race doesn't mean they are meant to run your life. Real love from God feels safe. It feels stable. It feels secure. It feels peaceful. Think about this. Have you ever been in a relationship or talked to someone and you felt like you were walking on eggshells? Every word you said had to be calculated. Every text you sent had to be strategic. You felt like if you were completely yourself, they might lose interest. You couldn't be vulnerable because you were afraid of being judged or abandoned. That's not love. That's fear. And fear has no place in a God-written love story. Perfect love casts out fear. When God writes your love story, you will experience the peace of being fully known and fully loved. You won't have to hide parts of yourself to be accepted. You won't have to compromise your values to keep someone interested. You won't have to chase after someone who's giving you mixed signals. God doesn't speak in confusion. Let me give you a real life example. I know a man who was always caught up in situationships, almost, relationships that never turned into anything real. And every time he thought it was getting serious, the girl would pull away, or he would get ghosted, or she would say she wasn't ready for a relationship. And every time he was left feeling confused, insecure, and questioning his worth, until one day he decided to surrender his love life completely to God. He prayed, God, I don't want anything that's not from you. Give me peace or give me distance. Months later, he met a woman who was different. She was honest. She was clear about her intentions. She communicated with kindness and consistency. And for the first time, he wasn't anxious. He wasn't overthinking every interaction. He wasn't living in a cycle of highs and lows. He had peace, not because everything was perfect, but because there was clarity. That's how God works. The right person will not create emotional chaos in your life. The right person will bring peace into your life. And yes, relationships take effort. Yes, there will be disagreements. Yes, no one is perfect. But there is a difference between healthy challenges and unhealthy confusion. Peace is when you can pray together without feeling awkward. Peace is when you can be vulnerable without fear of rejection. Peace is when you can rest in the relationship instead of constantly performing in it. Peace is when you know deep down, this person is not here to play games with your heart. And let me tell you, that peace is priceless. You can't buy it, you can't fake it, you can't manufacture it. Peace is the evidence that God's hand is on the relationship. And maybe right now, you're in a season where everything feels unclear. Maybe you're talking to someone, but their actions don't line up with their words. Maybe you're in a relationship, but you don't feel peace, you feel pressure. Can I encourage you? Don't ignore the absence of peace. Don't silence the still, small voice of God trying to protect you. Don't settle for someone who confuses you more than they comfort you. God's love story for you is not built on confusion. It's built on clarity. It's built on commitment. It's built on peace. And when God writes your love story, trust me, you will know, not because of butterflies, not because of emotional highs, but because of a quiet, steady, undeniable peace in your heart that says, this is safe, this is good, this is God. When God writes your love story, He doesn't just give you a person, He gives you timing that is perfect beyond human understanding. See, when God is involved, it's not just about who, it's about when. Because the right person at the wrong time is still the wrong thing. The right person before you're ready can feel like the wrong person. The right love story rushed out of desperation can end up in disappointment. But the love story that God writes is not just wrapped in His promises, it's wrapped in His timing. And oh, how hard that is for us to accept. We live in a world that glorifies instant results. We microwave everything. We fast forward movies. We want Amazon Prime delivery in hours, not days. We want everything now. We want the relationship now, the marriage now, the family now, the love story now. But God is not moved by our clocks. He's not pressured by our timelines. He doesn't panic when things are taking longer than we expected. God moves at the speed of preparation. And maybe the reason it feels like nothing is happening in your love life is because everything is happening in your heart. Maybe God is not withholding love from you. He's building you into the person who can sustain love when it shows up. Because the blessing given too soon can crush you. Let me tell you a story. There was a young woman I knew, beautiful, gifted, talented, and everyone wondered why she wasn't married yet. She had offers, she had people interested, but none of them felt like peace. None of them aligned with her purpose. And while her friends were getting engaged, married, starting families, she was still in the waiting room. But what nobody saw were the things God was doing in her during the waiting. She was healing from childhood wounds. She was learning to love herself fully. She was discovering her calling. She was building financial wisdom. She was strengthening her faith. And by the time God brought the right man into her life, she was not desperate. She was developed. She wasn't coming to the relationship looking to be completed. She was coming whole. And do you know what she said to me? She said, I used to think God was late. Now I realize He was protecting me from settling. See, when God writes your love story, He's not just matching you with someone who looks good. He's aligning you with someone who fits the purpose He placed in you. And alignment takes time. It takes time for two people to grow into who they're called to be. It takes time to heal from old wounds so you don't bleed on someone new. It takes time to learn how to love with patience, kindness, and wisdom. It takes time to build the kind of character that doesn't just fall in love but stays in love. And this is where many people miss it. They pray for love but don't prepare for love. They want a king but live like a peasant in their character. They want a queen but treat themselves like they're unworthy. But when God writes your love story, He develops you privately before He blesses you publicly. Think about it. David was anointed king but went back to tending sheep. Joseph had a dream but went through a prison before a palace. Ruth lost everything before she was positioned for Boaz. God's preparation often looks like isolation. It looks like long seasons of waiting. It looks like unanswered prayers. But behind the scenes, God is writing details you cannot even imagine. I wonder how many heartbreaks God has already saved you from. I wonder how many tears you would have cried had He given you what you thought you wanted. I wonder how many toxic cycles He blocked by closing doors you were begging Him to open. That's love. That's grace. That's divine timing. And I get it. Waiting is hard. It's hard when you watch others post their engagement photos. It's hard when you sit at weddings wondering when your turn will come. It's hard when family gatherings turn into interrogation sessions about your relationship status. But let me tell you, waiting on God is never wasted time. Waiting on God is training ground. Waiting on God is the birthplace of wisdom. Waiting on God builds roots so that when the right love comes, you can handle it with maturity. Because anyone can fall in love. But it takes wisdom, patience, and God's grace to stay in love. And maybe right now you feel like you've been forgotten. Maybe you feel like everyone else's love story is playing out while yours is stuck on pause. But God's delay is not His denial. His silence is not His absence. His timing is not your enemy. It's your protection. He's not just writing a love story for you. He's writing a legacy through you. He's setting you apart because what He's preparing you for is too valuable to be rushed. So don't let loneliness convince you to settle for less. Don't let impatience make you grab what's available instead of waiting for what's ordained. Don't let comparison steal your contentment. Your story is still being written. And when God turns the page, when the right time comes, it will not be forced. It will not be confusing. It will not be chaotic. It will be peace. It will be purpose. It will be right on time. Because when God writes your love story, His timing is always perfect. When God writes your love story, He doesn't just give you someone to walk through life with. He gives you someone who will walk in purpose with you. Purpose. This isn't about finding someone who makes you feel good in the moment. It's about finding someone who pushes you toward destiny, who aligns with the calling God has on your life, and who helps you become the best version of yourself. You see, love that's only about emotion is fleeting. Love that's only about attraction is temporary, but love that's rooted in purpose, that's powerful. That's the kind of love that sticks through every season, through every struggle, and through every triumph. I've watched so many people get into relationships where they were completely wrapped up in the feeling of being in love, but had no idea where that love was taking them. They didn't ask the big questions. Questions like, does this person share my values? Are we headed in the same direction? Do we want the same things out of life? And because they didn't ask those questions, they ended up with someone who wasn't a partner in their purpose. They ended up with someone who distracted them from their purpose. But when God writes your love story, He sends someone who will help push you closer to the person He's created you to be. Not someone who just validates who you are right now, but someone who challenges you to grow into who you're supposed to be. And this takes time, this takes discernment, this takes wisdom. I know a woman who was dating someone for years. He was good to her, he was caring, thoughtful, and even supportive of her dreams. But something inside her felt unsettled. Deep down, she knew he wasn't the one. She knew he was a good man, but he wasn't the man that would carry her toward God's plan for her life. He wasn't the one who would help her rise to her highest potential. And that's the tough part about purpose-driven love. It's not always about finding someone who makes you feel good in the moment. It's about finding someone who pushes you to be more. It's about finding someone who knows when to challenge you and when to support you. It's about finding someone who sees the calling on your life and encourages you to go after it with everything you've got. That's what happened with this woman. She had to let go of a good man to step into God's greater purpose for her. She had to trust that God had someone who would not only love her, but also align with her destiny. And when she finally surrendered, God brought her a man who not only encouraged her in her faith, but also challenged her to chase her dreams with more tenacity than she ever thought possible. And it wasn't easy for her. She questioned herself. She second-guessed her decision. But when she finally met the man God had for her, she realized why her previous relationship had to end. This man was going to help her fulfill the vision God had placed in her heart. And she was going to help him do the same. Together, they would build something bigger than just a marriage. They would build a life of purpose. When God writes your love story, purpose is at the core of everything. I think back to my own life and how I almost settled for someone who wasn't aligned with my vision. I was in a relationship with someone I thought was good enough because I was afraid of being alone. I didn't want to wait any longer. I was tired of being single, tired of seeing everyone else find their one, and tired of feeling like there was something wrong with me. But I'm so grateful that God intervened. He showed me that I was worth more than just being good enough. He showed me that I was destined for more than just an average relationship. And once I finally trusted God's timing, I met someone who didn't just love me, they loved my purpose. They didn't just support my dreams, they helped me dream bigger. They didn't just accept me where I was. They challenged me to become who God had called me to be. That's what purpose-driven love does. It doesn't just settle for where you're at. It sees where you're going and gets excited to go there with you. So let me ask you this. Are you willing to wait for someone who aligns with your purpose? Are you willing to trust God enough to wait for the person who will walk with you through the highs and lows, the joys and the challenges, the successes and the failures, all while pushing you closer to your destiny? Because when God writes your love story, He doesn't just give you someone who is good enough. He gives you someone who is right enough. Someone who will partner with you to fulfill the unique calling He has for both of your lives. And sometimes the waiting feels long. Sometimes it feels like everyone else is finding their purpose partner while you're still waiting. But trust me, your purpose partner is coming. And when they do, you'll look back and thank God for every moment of waiting, every moment of doubt, and every moment of surrender. Because you'll realize it was all part of God's perfect plan. So keep trusting, keep believing, and keep seeking the one who knows exactly what you need. Because when God writes your love story, it's more than just about love. It's about purpose. And that's the kind of love story worth waiting for. When God writes your love story, worth waiting for, when God writes your love story, He doesn't just write a chapter of passion and romance. He writes a story of partnership, building a future together, and purpose that transcends the relationship itself. God doesn't simply give you someone to live with. He gives you someone to build a life with. And this is one of the most beautiful things about a love story written by God. It's not just about what happens in the relationship. It's about what happens because of the relationship. The two of you accomplishing something greater than you could have done alone. You see, we often get so caught up in the emotions of love that we forget about the deeper purpose behind it. Love isn't just about the butterflies, the sweet text messages, the hand-holding moments. It's about creating something significant, something that leaves a legacy. When God writes your love story, He gives you a partner who will join you in building a life that aligns with His will. Together, you will be a force to be reckoned with, not just in your own lives, but in the world around you. Think about it. Have you ever seen a couple who simply works well together? They have a rhythm. They have a partnership that extends beyond the daily tasks. They make each other better. They challenge each other to grow. And together, they are able to accomplish things that neither could do alone. I'm not talking about just any couple. I'm talking about the couple who has aligned hearts, who share a vision, and who support each other's dreams while creating a vision that includes both of them. This is the kind of love story God has designed. I know a man who had always dreamed of starting his own business. He had the passion, he had the idea, but he didn't have the courage to take the leap. He was stuck in a dead-end job, and every time he thought about making the change, fear held him back. He thought, what if I fail? He thought, what if this is just a dream and not a reality? But then he met her. She wasn't just beautiful on the outside. She was beautiful in her heart, in her spirit, and in her understanding of who he was. She didn't just support his dreams. She believed in them. And more importantly, she believed in him. She knew his potential, and she helped him see it too. She encouraged him when the doubts crept in. She prayed for him when the fear tried to take over. She stood by him when he started his business, and when he faced setbacks, she reminded him of the strength he had inside. That partnership didn't just create a business, it created a legacy. Together, they built something bigger than themselves. And today, not only is the business thriving, but they've become mentors to others to thrive, helping people build their own businesses and empowering them to pursue their passions. It's more than just a business. It's a movement. And that's what happens when God writes your love story. He gives you someone who doesn't just walk alongside you, but someone who empowers you to walk into the fullness of your potential. But here's the truth. Partnership requires sacrifice. It requires commitment. It requires being willing to put someone else's needs ahead of your own when the time comes. I've seen many relationships crumble because one person was unwilling to sacrifice their own desires, dreams, or comfort for the sake of the relationship. When you're building something with someone, you have to be willing to grow together, even when that growth requires personal discomfort. This is not a sacrifice of your core values or your identity. It's a sacrifice of your selfishness. It's a choice to love someone else deeply and intentionally, to put their well-being on the same level as your own. Think about the times in a relationship when you've been tested. Maybe there was a time when you had to make a difficult decision that impacted both of you. Maybe there was a season of hardship when one of you had to lean on the other for emotional support, financial help, or guidance. Those are the moments that build the foundation of your future together. Those are the moments that define the strength of your bond. And when you have a partner who is willing to sacrifice for the betterment of the relationship, that love is unshakable. It's not based on surface level attraction, but on deep-rooted commitment to each other's well-being and to building something together. When God writes your love story, He gives you someone who is willing to walk with you through every high and low. They don't run when things get tough. They don't abandon you when you're facing challenges. Instead, they stand with you shoulder to shoulder and help you fight through the storm. This is the kind of love that endures, the kind of love that isn't shaken by life's circumstances. This is the kind of love that creates a legacy. And legacy isn't just about what you accomplish in your own lifetime, it's about what you leave behind. What will your relationship produce for the generations that come after you? What will your children, your grandchildren, your community see in the love you share? Will they see a partnership that honors God, that builds something meaningful, that makes a difference in the world? This is what happens when God writes your love story. You create a legacy that is about more than just the two of you. It's about what you do together to impact the world. When God writes your love story, it's not just about finding someone who is good for you. It's about finding someone who is good for the world, someone who will help you become all that God has called you to be, and someone you will help rise to their full potential as well. Together, you become a powerhouse for the kingdom. Together, you build something that will outlast you, that will make a lasting impact, and that will inspire others to do the same. So when God writes your love story, understand this. It's not just about romance. It's not just about having someone to share your life with. It's about building something that matters, something that aligns with God's will, and something that leaves a legacy for generations to come. This is the true power of a love story written by God.